bro. About to hit the club and turn the shoot to a freak show. Look through the peephole, everybody geek, yo. Need to get girl with an extreme. Need to see 6 midgets that be fire juggling. Maybe it's just me, cause my mind is struggling. Babes, boyfriend is acting like a clown. Know what's going down every time that we are down. Take a look through the peephole, yo. Everybody's getting geek, bro. Stop the hate and let them neeks know that we turn the club into a freak show. Turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club, yeah, we turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club into a freak show. Freak show, turn it to 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 a freak show. Look at Snow White eating rotten apples. Dirty bass that be coming at you. Roller coasters like a supernova. Around the ring master, this my tabernacle. See you screaming, I'm like, what for? Oh, you pop? Yeah, I got popcorn. I've been wake up on the wrong lawn, so we won't stop. It's a lost cause. Take a look through the peephole. Yo, everybody's getting geek, bro. Stop the hate and let them neeks know that we turn the club into a freak show. Turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club to a freak show. Turn the club, yeah, we turn the club to a freak show.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to Sidetrack Sunday. This is the fourth Sidetrack Sunday for the month of June. So I'm hosting this week because I let Ray host last week for our Father's Day special, which was a hoot and a half. So before I get to saying the highs and stuff, I do have someone down in the basement, a special guest. We're going to be talking about a specific railroad. So make sure you got your questions ready because he's definitely going to be on the hot seat to see how well his knowledge is on his particular railroad that he models. All right, so before we get to that, while y'all are looking at the model railroading live streams, that is over to my left. And thank you, John from the Schuylkill River Valley, for making that list. If you have a live stream and it's not listed there, either send John, Heath, or myself an email, and we'll definitely find a way to get you added on there. All right, so let's see who we got in the chat. We got Chris, go via or go home. He is asking if he is first because he definitely put the question mark on the back of it. So yes, Chris, you're first. James Galton says he's second. We got Shane's Train saying Trey, so I guess he wanted to throw in a little Espanol there. We got Lynn McCurdy. We got Marty with M&M Short Lines Railroad. We got John with the Schuylkill River Valley. Frank Steeler fan. Ron Moen. Ray Bobel. Santa Fe Bob. We got Dragon Lover 68. We got New Fenris Railroad here. Let's see who else. Jerry Sattarelli. We got Container Man 68. Mr. Rory Hardwick, which he actually came through my area the other day. And, of course, I didn't have enough notice, so I wasn't able to meet up with him. But he did come through the area. We got Nisi here. We got Caboose 121. Joe Rader and the Black Rock Central Railroad. And, Joe, I don't know if you were on or got a chance to watch Ray's Sidetrack Sunday last week, but Aaron was pretty stoked on the boxcar you sent him. So that was really cool. Let's see. We got Dwight Curley, Brian Page. And I'm just about caught up. We got Thomas Grassi here. I hope I said your last name correctly. If not, please let me know in the chat. We got Pappy in the house. We got Rail Artist. Heath from Humanity Junction. And I think I'm about caught up. Oh, Steve 87th PSAP. John 2618 is also here. Wicked and Sanity is in the house. Motorman 2015. So that is a new name to my channel. So welcome. Let's see. Who else we got? Mr. Jimbo Trains. And if I haven't said your name, I apologize. Kyle Stevens. So make sure you say hi in the chat like 20 times so that way eventually I'll see it and give you your proper hello. Tim, CP368 Productions. Let's see who else. And I think I am caught up. Yes, Heath, I see where you're putting hi in there 20 times because I've already said hi to you. All right, so I'm officially caught up with the chat, and it looks like the Model Railroading live streams is finishing up. So let me get into this screen, and let's bring on this week's culprit that is hanging out in the basement. I've had him up in lock and key for the past week. So I guess we'll let him out finally.
Hey.
What's going on, Mr. Steve?
Hey, everybody.
How are you doing
nice
today?
Nice to be out of the basement.
I bet. It gets kind of, the air probably gets a little stagnant down there.
Well, it gets wet because I'm in Florida, so.
Well, yeah. I mean, we don't have a good water table here either. I mean, what's a basement really, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, our version of a basement's a garage. So.
Ours is nothing.
All right, we got Mark, M&M Rails in the house. What's going on, Mr. Mark? All right, so you model a specific railroad or a specific group of railroads. What is the railroad that you are typically, that's your freak flag? Everywhere west the Burlington route. How about that?
Yep. The Chicago,
so that
Burlington,
would be
and Quincy.
Yep, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy. That's pretty cool. All right, so what do you know about the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy?
I grew up, a little history. I grew up 6 blocks from what's called the racetrack. All right, and the racetrack runs between Chicago, Illinois, and Aurora, Illinois, and it's about a 45-mile overall distance. And why they call it the racetrack is because it's a 3-line main line. Okay. And back in the day, they used to call the center track the Zephyr track. Okay. Because it was a straight shot through the suburbs. The Zephyr didn't stop. It stopped in Aurora, and some of them would stop in LaGrange, Illinois. But for the most part, it was a straight shot to Union Station downtown.
Oh, wow.
So I grew up, like I said, 6 blocks away from the tracks. And my grandmother, when I was 3 years old, would walk me down to the station, and we would sit and watch trains for a couple hours and have a soda from the local burger joint and just sit and watch trains. So I grew up with the Burlington, you know, and for many years I thought it was the only railroad. To this day, I still think it's the only railroad, but that's beside
So that's exactly like me. That's what I thought about the Cotton Belt because I know my grandpa worked for it. And then, of course, you know, growing up as a kid, I could look out the back window and see the tracks. I could hear the train horn. I would know if a train was coming through, and I could see Cotton Belt everywhere. So I know exactly what you mean.
So just so everybody gets a flavor of the Burlington, as I walk through my knowledge base, let me show you a map of the Burlington during its heyday.
Sure.
Okay. And you can see Chicago there and all the blue squiggly lines. And I wish I had a way of pointing out, because I don't think my mouse shows up on. Does my mouse show up?
It actually does. I'm going to pause you real quick. I'm going to go ahead and say a few hellos. We got Joey from Late Night Model Railroad here, who just released a really good video for you NCE people or thinking about NCE about consisting. We got David Atkins. We got Tyler from Lackawanna Rail Fan, our winner, one of our winners from the 700 subscriber bingo. And I want to say Shay's N-Scale was the other one that popped in. So welcome, guys. All right, continue.
Okay. So, of course, up here you got Chicago. Well, the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy actually started out here in what is now the far western suburbs of Chicago, in Aurora and Batavia. And the railroad was chartered in 1848 under the name Aurora, Batavia. I forget. I've got notes on it I'll look at later. But it ran north and south between Aurora and Batavia and connected up to the Galena and Chicago Union Railroad. And they leased trackage rights between out there at Batavia into Chicago, and they had to pay the Galena and Chicago Union Railroad, which later became Chicago Northwestern. They had to pay them 70% of the revenue. Okay, and the reason the railroad was started was because they were afraid that they were going to get overlooked in having a railroad service them. So this ensured them, and that back in the 1800s, that was a big deal. All right,
Yeah.
railroad come through your community, your community would grow. If it didn't, it could die. So, and it wasn't until the 1850s that they began a survey. I think it was around 1855. A survey, a route direct from Aurora into Chicago, and that route ended up being from Chicago to Berwyn and Cicero to LaGrange to Hinsdale to Downers Grove, Lisle, Naperville, and into Aurora. And that whole distance is 45, 50 miles.
Okay.
And provided the agricultural means into the city, but it also, the bigger part back then was commuter traffic, passenger service. All right, and the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy started passenger service in the line was done, and they started passenger service in 1864 from Chicago to Downers Grove, because from Downers Grove westward, back in those days with steam, it was too far to commute. Okay, the trains didn't go fast enough, and it was determined Downers Grove would be the end point. And there was actually a turntable there in Downers Grove that when I was a little boy, they were tearing it out. Okay,
Right.
No roundhouse, just a turntable to turn the steam locomotives around for the commuter service. Anyway, to put it back in perspective, you had Chicago, and right here was Aurora, and it came down here to Galesburg, which was a key point, and split off in a whole bunch of directions, including Burlington, Iowa, and Quincy. Ultimately, they got into St. Louis, all the way down to Paducah, but they came across here to St. Joe, Missouri. And that was a key point because that allowed them to get a mail contract to St. Joe and provide coast-to-coast mail service even before the Transcontinental Railroad was completed, because St. Joe was the easternmost point of the Pony Express. So the Burlington would haul the mail from Chicago to St. Joe, Missouri, and the Pony Express would take it from there westward.
Okay.
The Burlington finally, also in the 1860s or so, and don't hold me to it on the dates, but they completed 2 bridges across the Mississippi River, one at Burlington, Iowa, and one at Quincy, Illinois.
Okay.
All right, and those are the 2 areas right in here. All right. That allowed them alternate routes into St. Louis and across Missouri and Iowa, and ultimately into Omaha and St. Joe, and then westward all the way out to Denver. Okay. Now, if you look, and finally expanding up to Casper, Wyoming, and in the 1900s, I believe it was, or 1880s, they bought the Colorado Southern and Denver Fort Worth, which gave them service all the way down into Galveston.
Gotcha.
If you look at all the areas that they serviced, they had pretty much a lock on grain service. Okay?
Oh, absolutely.
They had the Illinois River, the Mississippi River, the Ohio River, the Missouri River, all locked up where they could transport grain into these river ports for barge service down the Mississippi and out of the wheat fields of Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Texas, down into Galveston.
Yeah, down to the Gulf. Which,
so agriculture,
that makes total sense.
Yeah, agriculture was a huge thing for the expansion of the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy. They were also one of the first railroad, if not the first railroad, to service the Chicago stockyards, which, until the 1960s was the biggest butcher capital of the world, all right? Particularly for your sheep, goats, but primarily for hogs and cattle.
So Brian Page says that he's going to say that you know your stuff and you passed the test. So I've got a few more people that popped in, and I'm hoping I'm not going to miss any of these. But we have Mystic Southern Railway. That's I think John number 7. Split Rock has joined us. We got Z Fantasy Trains, and I feel like I'm missing somebody. Roy E. So he has joined us as well. And it shows like we're up to 48 people, now dropped to 47. So I guess someone didn't like what's going on, but hey, maybe they'll come back. Who knows? And then if I didn't say hi to Z Fantasy Trains, Z also joined us too. So that's a really neat history and it kind of gives that perspective as to, what all they controlled. Because Chicago had a lot of railroads, if I'm not mistaken.
Chicago was the railroad capital of the United States. Almost, I won't say all, but almost every major railroad in the United States had some type of service into the Chicago area.
Right.
Either themselves or interlining with another railroad. As an example, your SP, they would interline with the Rock Island. Okay.
Right.
So even the SP had access into Chicago. About the only ones that didn't were the East Coast North-South lines of the day.
Yeah.
All right, and even then, I'm sure that they could interline with somebody. Okay?
Right, and when it comes to that, that Mississippi River, from what I was told, you got what's called the gateway cities. Mm-hmm. Now we all know St. Louis is the gateway, but it's not the only gateway. There was actually 3 others. Chicago was one of them, and Memphis and New Orleans were your other 2. So, and that's like if you look at Class 1 railroads today, they're either east of those 4 cities or they're west of those 4 cities. So, and of course, I mean, Burlington did have a little bit of trackage, down into, like Paducah, for example, which is, and even the Cotton Belt, Cotton Belt went to St. Louis. It actually didn't go to St. Louis. It went to East St. Louis, Illinois. So the Cotton Belt even crossed the Mississippi. And then I think it had trackage rights into St. Louis from one of the railroads, and I do not remember which one.
Interesting thing. Why do you think why was it so important for the Burlington to get to Paducah, do you think?
Paducah, that would be also crossing the Ohio River. So
one of the big things about grain and barge traffic on the Mississippi River, you can only go so far north 365 days a year.
Right.
Currently, because of the lock and dam system that exists, the furthest north all year river port on the Mississippi River system is Keokuk, Iowa.
Right.
Back then, it was probably St. Louis because you didn't have lock and dam service north of St. Louis. So there were times of the year you didn't have enough water to get a barge up and down the river because you didn't have the dams in place to give you the depth necessary for the barge traffic.
Right.
So there's a lot of that came into play of why they needed to get further south and get down to Paducah, because at St. Louis, south of St. Louis, there's no more locks and dams. Okay, so the river it maintains an adequate depth from there, even back in the day, for all year, all weather barge traffic. So that's why it was so important for Paducah.
And that makes total sense. And then of course now you're also giving it access to a river that goes back towards the east too. So yeah, totally. Looks like we got Greg, Midsummer Railway in scale, tuning in from Australia.
Yeah.
Or New Zealand. I can't remember which one exactly, but over there down under. So
Keith had a question about did the cb&q or Burlington Northern also drive their trains off the tracks. Funny you should say that. There were 3 derailments in Downers Grove, my hometown. One of them was the Goddess Zephyr out of Minneapolis, came through and hit Downers Grove Main, took the whole front end off the Downers Grove Main Street station, which is all brick. Okay. There was another one, a freight train out at the Belmont station. And then another one was between Downers Grove Main Street and Downers Grove Fairview station that ended up in my friend's backyard. So yes, they did drive their trains off the tracks too, Heath.
Wow. All right, so Heath actually had a question earlier, and that really kind of fast forwards the time schedule. So I'm gonna kind of break the question down a little bit deeper than from what Heath knows. So Heath's original question was something about why did BN join the Santa Fe to form the BNSF? Well, I think we need to backtrack a little further than that and find out why did the Burlington join up with a couple of other railroads to become the Burlington Northern.
Okay, as of I believe it was 1901, almost 100% of the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy stock was owned by the Northern Pacific and the Great Northern Railroads. Okay.
All right.
Those 2 railroads were and the reason they were buying up cb&q stock is they didn't want the other one to get a hold of the railroad.
Exactly. Okay? And then one becomes a subsidiary.
Yeah, because both of those ran parallel tracks from often side by side between the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Seattle. Okay. But neither had rights into Chicago. So owning together owning the controlling interest assured them that the Union Pacific couldn't buy them, which they were also after them. But it also assured that the other couldn't have them. But what that did was, each of the Northern Pacific and Great Northern would not grant the other one trackage rights on the Burlington. So as a compromise, what happened was the Burlington would haul the North Coast Limited and the Empire Builder under Burlington Power from the Twin Cities into Chicago. Therefore, that racetrack I talked about earlier was very busy between the Zephyrs, all right, because all the Burlington passenger trains, there's a number of Zephyrs that came out of Chicago. But you also had those two trains, and then you had what's called the Dinkies.
Right.
And the Dinkies are the commuter trains. They're the bi-level passenger commuter trains. All right, and they call them Dinkies because they were small. They only had three to five cars per train.
Right.
And compared to the 10 to 15 cars on one of the Zephyrs or the Empire Builder, etc. So it's funny, you go back and look through the archives of pictures, and you'll find the E8s and E9s or E7s hauling of Burlington, hauling the North Coast Limited and the Empire Builders into Chicago. So it makes for interesting pictures. So when I run my North Coast Limited here on my layout, I have one Empire Builder car mixed on that train, just to kind of to show that. So, but anyway, that gets back to the trifecta of those two. And as early as the 1960s, the three railroads were trying to figure out how to merge. Okay, now it's important to note that although 100% of the stock, almost 100% of the stock of the Burlington stock was owned by those two other railroads, all right, the Burlington still operated autonomously. And it is the only Class 1 railroad still surviving that has always had, since 1848, always had a profitable year. Okay?
Oh, wow.
There's never been an unprofitable year. It's also the last surviving Class 1 railroad with continuous scheduled passenger service. Okay? Because the BNSF, even today, operates passenger trains. Those commuter trains for Metra in Chicago are operated by, on the Burlington route, are operated by the BNSF. All right, and you can see the placards on the passenger cars. So it's another.
So to tag on to the profitable year, I think Heath is asking if that was true for 2020. Well, cb&q was not a company in 2020. So
No, but the Burlington route, you throw all that in together. I am not sure, Heath. You know, as of at least 2019, they were, and I would imagine in 2020 they were. They definitely will be in 2021 since Keystone Pipeline's been discontinued. Now that oil has to be hauled by rail car, and instead of under what $20 a barrel through a pipeline, it's 60 plus now on a rail car. And it's funny because the BNSF is the one that would haul it.
Yep, they actually hauled it back when Obama was president too. They would send it came through Arkansas because it would come out of Chicago and head down to the Gulf. And of course, it was on Union Pacific tracks, but BNSF was the one who transported it through trackage rights because it was more of a direct route.
I don't think it was coming out of Chicago though. It was because it comes out of Montana down.
No, there's some that come out of the Chicago area and the refineries up that way as well.
Oh, that's right. There are big refineries up in Chicago.
Yeah, so that's where it's coming from. Because what they would do is they would use, from Sikeston, Missouri, down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, that part of Texas. You've got the old Mopac line and the old Cotton Belt line. They paralleled each other. And so Union Pacific owns both of those. And so UP will run all their northbound trains on the old Mopac line, and they run all the southbound trains on the old Cotton Belt. So that way they don't have to worry about putting trains in siding. They can, move traffic a lot easier And so that's why BNSF has those trackage rights just for that.
Yeah. The oil originally comes out of Canada, down Montana, yes. Wyoming, Nebraska, and probably into Chicago to the refineries before going south.
Yep, they're hauling crude oil. So I think it's chemical placard 1267, if I'm not mistaken. So we've got a couple of other people that joined in. We've got Randall Ellison, and I know I'm missing somebody. Of course, Heath has been asking question after question after question, but that's typical Heath. So tell us something new, right? Wimbletrain, I think, was the other one that popped in that I didn't get to say hi to. Okay, so with that whole merger,
that was in 1970.
And okay,
they had 1 year before Amtrak took over, and it was funny because Burlington got top billing to the two Northerns. Okay. But then they adopted the Great Northerns, semi-adopted the Great Northerns paint scheme, because the Great Northern passenger service had blue with a white stripe. Okay.
Okay.
Well, the new Burlington Northern was green. So they did green. They had the Great Northern's paint scheme, except instead of blue, it was green. All right. So
Ian from Lehigh River, he also popped in as well. So Split Rock wants to know, which Zephyr is your favorite?
There isn't a whole lot of difference between the Denver Zephyr and the California Zephyr, other than the California Zephyr is interlined between a number of different railroads. The three main railroads, of course, are the cb&q, the Western Pacific and Denver Rio Grande, I believe. But you had Eastern railroads that would interline sleeper cars. As an example, Pincy would interline sleeping cars onto the at Chicago onto the California Zephyr. So, I mean, that's the California Zephyr is the most famous of the Zephyrs.
Yeah.
But getting back, Zephyr service started in the 1920s, but it started with steam locomotives. Another interesting story is Electromotive Division of GM. All right. The Burlington, the cb&q, pioneered diesel locomotion with EMD. All right. It wasn't called EMD back in the day, but their plant started, their fledgling little company started in LaGrange, Illinois, which was right on the Burlington route. Okay? So they built those first articulated Zephyrs. And the diesel motor in those things wasn't much bigger than a dumpster. Okay. And they pioneered those. They put them into service in 1934. Okay. And they ran it initially from Denver to Chicago and set a record and shaved, I believe it was 4 hours off of the time. All right. And they were doing that to get more and more passengers back to the railroads, even as early as 1934. Okay. And it wasn't until about 1945 that the E units came out, and then they began moving over to the E units.
So Heath wants to know, why did the Burlington not have a GG1?
Because it wasn't on electrified tracks.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then Split Rock, I guess he missed the part where you were explaining what the dinky was, and he was, I guess, asking if it had anything to do with me.
Short people, right? It's a train for short people.
Hey, I know I'm short. I mean, y'all see me when I was over at Flying Crow last month.
A dinky is a Chicago commuter train. All right. And they call them dinkies because the railroad workers called them dinkies because they were so much shorter than the normal passenger service or the freight service. All right. They were typically 3 to 5 in later years bi-level commuter cars. Okay. And it's funny, in the last scheduled steam locomotive on the Burlington route was a commuter train from downtown Chicago to Downers Grove on September 29th, 1959, and my dad was on that train.
Okay.
So, another fun fact.
We got DES Media Productions has joined us. So welcome, DES Media Productions.
That's Dave.
Okay.
That's Dave P.
Oh, okay. So now I know what channel to tag that.
Or Paul. If you're Heath, it's Paul. Somebody asked what railroad the Great Northern became a part of. They must have missed the part where the Northern Pacific and the Great Northern merged with, or the Burlington merged with those two other railroads, forming the Burlington Northern in 1970.
Yes. And then in 1980, Randall Ellison made the comment that that's when the Frisco joined the BN as well.
Yeah, I believe that's true because I think it was part of another deal. It wasn't actually that merger. I don't think could have been. Right. I don't know. All
right. Looks like we got a question here. Why did the Burlington change from the black and gray paint to the red and gray paint?
I don't know. You're talking about
there was a lot of railroads that changed their colors. A lot.
Yeah. Even I think it had something to do with post-war artistry. If you look at even automobiles, all right, up until around 1950, everything was black and white or gray. You didn't start having the vibrant colors until the 50s. I would suspect it had a lot to do with that because I got one of my E7s is the black stripe paint scheme on the nose. It still has red, but it's primarily black. Whereas after that point in time, everything became red stripe.
Okay. They say that's like, with the SP, they had two different paint schemes, one for passenger, one for freight. And then over time, in the mid 60s, they went to a single paint scheme that was completely different.
The question may have involved this paint scheme.
Which that is a really cool paint scheme.
This paint scheme was for switchers. Okay. The switchers had the black and gray. And they called on the GPs and even the SDS, they called it the black bird. I guess because of the striping in the front resembled feathers or wings or whatever. I'm not sure.
But here's that.
Here's another neat thing. Okay. If you look at on one side, it'll have Way of the Zephyrs. On the other side, it'll say Everywhere West. Okay?
Oh, cool.
So if the train is going towards Chicago, if you're on the south side of the tracks, and if the train's going towards Chicago, it says Way of the Zephyrs. Right. And if it's coming out of Chicago, it would say Everywhere West.
As long as all the locomotives was pointed forward.
That's true. But at least the lead locomotive would be that way.
Right.
And again, this is a GP7. and it was a road switcher. I'd see a lot of these switching out the industries in Downers Grove, like Pepperidge Farm Bakery.
Mm-hmm.
Couple other fun facts. The Burlington was one of, if not the first, to have a hump yard to classify trains, and in Cicero, Illinois. Cicero or Berwyn.
Do you remember
right
what year
next to
that
each other.
was?
No, I don't. I want to say the 30s or 40s.
Okay. We got Derek Alexander. That is a new name that I'm recognizing. So welcome to Sidetrack Sunday, Derek. Let's see here. Let's see if we can find. Heath mentioned something about circus.
Something about a circus wagon I saw.
Yeah.
Why did they do away with the Great Northern Circus wagon? Why did the Burlington do away with it? I don't know. That wasn't a Burlington decision. You got to remember, the controlling interest in the Burlington was held by the Great Northern and the Northern Pacific.
Northern Pacific,
okay?
Right.
So even though Burlington got top billing, all right, all the financials, and I guess they moved the headquarters for the Burlington out of Chicago and moved it up to the Twin Cities too. And I was fortunate enough in my college days to go to what was then Burlington's biggest hump yard in Northtown of Minneapolis. And we got to go up in the control tower. I was a transportation major. We got to go up in the control tower and watch them hump a train. That was pretty cool.
See, that's what I got to do with my grandfather as a child, because where I grew up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, that was Cotton Belt's midway point, and they had a huge hump yard there. And it's right beside the Arkansas River, so there was a levee between the river and the hump yard, so we would actually sit on the levee, which is higher than the actual hump. So you could see every single track.
Nisi asked about Burlington Rock Island. Yeah, short-lived. It's not the same as the Rock Island line or the Rock.
Yeah.
It was just a short line between Burlington, Iowa, and Rock Island that gave ultimately the cb&q trackage into the Quad Cities.
So Heath wants to know, what do you have against F units?
F units were designed as actually an upgrade to E units for use in mountainous regions. Okay. Something about the horsepower to weight to axle. I don't know. I don't know the mechanics of it.
So F for EMD, F stood for 1400. Mm-hmm. So the FTs, that was 1400. And then the E units were originally ETs, 1800s.
Even though
they came with new generations, they replaced the T with a number.
But there was something about the dynamics of the F units that made them better through the mountains. Okay.
I think it was the weight to horsepower ratio, or the torque.
Weight on the axles is what I'm.
Yeah.
The traction. Now, when you saw an F unit train, for instance, like the Super Chief, it would have an A, two Bs, and then an A again. All right. So it would have like 4 locomotives. Right. You very rarely saw an E unit train with more than 2 locomotives.
Right. So, Steve 87 wants to know, if you're supposed to stay off the tracks, how do you hump a train?
It's a very large condom.
All right, so Heath wants to tag on to your E unit question. Why not Alco PAs?
Well, if you caught an earlier portion of my EMD actually boomed in business because of the cb&q. All right. They were in partnership to build the Zephyrs. All right. And once they proved how powerful and economical a diesel engine was over a steam engine, and how much less mechanical upkeep, which was even a bigger part of the equation, was EMD as a company. It was called something else back in the day. I don't remember what it was. As a company, just boomed. Okay. And if you're going to buy diesels, you know, and you're in partnership with a company, so to speak, to do it, and you've got a great working relationship, why go to PAs? Why go to Alco? Okay.
Right.
If you look at the Burlington lineup over the years, yeah, they had a few GEs in there, U-boats, okay, but primarily, and it's changed some now, but primarily back in the day, it was all EMD, okay, because of that initial startup relationship. Okay, you want Heath want BN, cb&q, Bnsf, GN, et cetera, et cetera. He wants to know what I model. I model the cb&q, all right, with a little bit of Santa Fe. You know, if you looked at the lines going into Chicago, coming out of the north was a Milwaukee Road, northwest, and due west was a Chicago Northwestern. West southwest was the cb&q. Southwest was the Santa Fe. South southwest was the Rock Island. South was the Illinois Central. And then you had the Baltimore, Ohio, Pincy, New York Central, Grand Trunk, and a half a dozen others that would wrap around the south side of Chicago and head east. So,
and I totally lost count.
I'm not wearing a BN shirt, Keith. I'm wearing a Burlington. Okay, which is cb&q.
I don't see anything that says Northern on that. All right, so Split Rock wants to know, how many engines can you fit in that roundhouse behind you?
9. I take it back. It depends. These over here on this side, on the first 3 stalls, I can put double consists in. For instance, in this first stall here, I got 2 GP35s, I got 2 F7s, and this one's currently empty, but I could put two F7s or 2 GP35s in there. But there's 9 stalls, and then 5 more outside.
So Split Rock thinks that you modeled the BNSF in every railroad before that. So do you have anything like the Frisco?
No, I model mid 1960s.
Split Rock, you were close, but no cigar.
So, mid 60s, give or take, and as a kid, even though scheduled passenger service stopped September of 1959, the cb&q Burlington would run excursion trains on weekends out from Chicago to Galesburg. Okay, steam service until 1966. So as a little kid going down to Railfan, you see the steam power going by on the weekends, which was pretty cool. And from my house, you could hear the whistles, all right, as it would go by.
Yeah.
So I mean, I grew up at the last of the steam era, so to speak.
That's cool, because there's nothing, I don't even know the right words.
Yeah, that's right, Shane.
But there's nothing more cool than to hear a whistle over an air horn. Just something about that steam whistle.
It is cool.
All right. So Ray, the Frisco, that is the SLSF. So SL was St. Louis, SF San Francisco. I don't think it ever made it to San Francisco though, but that's what they called the Frisco.
Right. I don't think it made it to San Francisco either.
Yeah, I know it was one of the few Class 1 railroads that actually had trackage on both sides of the Mississippi, because it had trackage all the way down to Birmingham, Alabama. The Frisco did. From Memphis to Birmingham. But I don't think And that's going to be more of a Randall Ellison question because he keeps up with like modern day BNSF. Does the BNSF still have that trackage all the way down to Birmingham? I don't know that.
Somebody just said, and I lost it. Hang on.
And Lynn, that is true.
Roy.
The town of Frisco, Texas was named after the Frisco Railroad.
Roy, the cb&q never made it to Seattle. Okay, it wasn't until the merger with the two Northerns that they had access all the way as the Burlington Northern. But the cb&q never made it further west than the Continental Divide, basically.
Heath, well, hold on. That was a wrong question. The chat moved up. So he says something about, there it is. He's going to stick with all the railroads in the Northeast. It's so much simpler. Wasn't there more railroads in the Northeast? I don't know how that could get any simpler.
Yeah, there's a higher concentration of them, that's for sure. But, if you go back and look at any railroad's history, you're going to find a lot that the railroads of today were made up of a lot of different railroads. Okay.
Right.
Even the cb&q, between its charter in 1848 and 1880s, all right, had probably close to 50 different names, railroads. I won't say names.
Oh, yeah.
All right, but it gobbled up a bunch and changed. And the way the legislative process and controls were in place, they'd say that a railroad could go between point A and point B, and before they got it built, then they'd say, no, you can't do that. You got to do this. So railroads were, it was tough operating a railroad back in the day.
That it was. And even the class ones that we know of, if you go and look at that history, they were built up a lot of short lines that literally interchanged. So Shay from Shay's N-Scale, who does not own a Shay locomotive, he wants to know if you run your whole layout off your computer or do you have a hand throttle? I know you have a Digitrax system, so do you use that Digitrax throttle or is it?
I don't. It's sitting down. It's down here. I got a Digitrax file right here. All right. And it's one of the wireless duplex ones, but I don't use it. I can run it from the computer through Jmri, but I typically run it off of old cell phone using Engine Driver. That way I can walk around, even though I got plug-in spots all around the railroad. I got one more to add, but I use the handhelds.
So we got Rick Bailey finally showed up, the last of the STS crew. Rick, I'm just giving you a hard time. And then Gus Hadley, the lunatic from Arno, is here as well. So welcome, Gus. So, the Burlington merged into, with the Northern Pacific, the Great Northern, formed the Burlington Northern. Yep. Now we're going to go back to Heath's original question. Why did the Burlington Northern form with the Santa Fe?
Okay.
To make it the BNSF.
Keep in mind, that's beyond my modeling. Okay. But if you look at what has happened in the last 25 years of the railroads, there has been consolidation after consolidation after consolidation. Okay, the one area, if you looked at a route map of the Burlington Northern prior to the BNSF, it had great coverage through the Midwest and Plain states. It had great coverage through the Pacific Northwest. Okay, but it and even down into Texas, basically east of the Rockies. It did not have a through route into Southern California. Okay. By gobbling up the Santa Fe, it then had trackage from LA to Chicago.
Right.
All right. Direct route. And even in Chicago, the Santa Fe went through a more industrial portion of Chicago. It had service into the port of Chicago, the Cal-Sag Harbor. It had service along the Illinois Sanitary Ship Canal. All right. The Santa Fe, even though the Chiefs came in and out of Chicago, to my knowledge, they did not offer any commuter service, okay, because the Rock Island serviced that portion of the suburbs, and the Santa Fe went through the more industrial parts of Chicago along the river.
That I think you're right on that. Now, Randall Ellison has brought up a very, very good point. And I was going to see if you was going to go that way, Steve. So before the Bnsf merger, there was two other big railroads, Santa Fe being one of them, that tried to do a merger.
In Southern Pacific.
It was Southern Pacific, and literally the ICC, or the Interstate Commerce Commission, I guess that's what it's called, basically threw their middle finger up at the both of them at the very last minute, even after they already started painting locomotives and
SPSF.
what's just called the Kodachrome.
Uh-huh.
And they had one boxcar fully painted too. And the failure of that merger, that's why the SP merged with the Rio Grande, and that's also why the BN merged with the SF. And so imagine what would have happened to the other Golden Spike Ceremony Railroad if that if the SPSF merger would have actually went through.
It would have locked Southern California in a vice.
It would have locked the whole West. Whole West.
You got to remember you get a lot of commerce. It locks a certain portion of commerce.
Yeah.
You get a lot of the agricultural commodities being shipped to Asia off of the BN at that point in time, and the Union Pacific out of the Bay Area. But a lot of the Southeast Asia stuff at the time all came through Los Angeles. Okay? And what eventually grew the container industry. And if the SP and the SF had merged, it would all have been on them. Now it's shared between the Union Pacific and the Burlington Northern Santa Fe.
Right.
So at least you still have some competition in that area.
And that was the whole reason why the ICC told them no, is because of the lack of competition. I mean, because you had, the Southern Pacific owned the Cotton Belt, so you might as well include that as well. The Cotton Belt was a subsidiary of the SP, even though it did function as its own entity until 92. But you had the whole southern half or the west half of the United States, from the Mississippi to the Pacific. And then, add a little bit more north to that with that Santa Fe, it would have locked a lot of stuff up.
Now, how far east did the Southern Pacific go?
It went through Arkansas, through the Cotton Belt,
well, I know,
all the way up to St. Louis.
How much further east did the Southern Pacific go? I mean, did it go to New Orleans? Did it go past New Orleans?
I don't know. It never went east of the Mississippi. The SP went all the way to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Tyler, Texas.
Yeah.
And that's where it joined the Cotton Belt.
Yeah.
But the SP owned that too. And so went up to...
went to Houston and I believe New Orleans.
Actually, and they also owned the TNO. The TNO, the Texas New Orleans, was also a subsidiary of Southern Pacific. So they had trackage to New Orleans through the TNO. They had trackage to St. Louis through the Cotton Belt. And then
they interlined with
and of course the Cotton Belt.
Chicago.
Well, and the Cotton Belt also had trackage with the Rock Island to Memphis. So there's 3 of your gateways, and then if they would have merged with the Santa Fe, that's all 4 gateways.
Yeah, I'm
if you think about it.
surprised that the Southern Pacific didn't gobble up the Rock Island back in the day.
Yeah. Oh. So Union Pacific has a song written by C.W. McCall. I have not heard of that song. I have heard one of his other songs called The Galloping Goose.
Didn't he do the Convoy song?
So, yeah, Heath, I just wanted to be like you, dude. No hair on top of the head,
I'm getting a natural mohawk, so.
Hey, Robert from the Flying Crow is here.
Hey, Robert.
So, welcome, Robert. Well, Steve, we've been going for an hour. You want to keep going? It's up to you.
I'm fine. Now, you want me to get in some morbid stories?
Hey, I'm down with whatever, unless the chat's got any more questions.
As a pre-teenager and my younger teenager years, having that racetrack, all right, the fast freights, the Zephyrs, etc., going through there, 3, 4, 5 times a year, you'd hear the sirens go off, and the kids in the neighborhood would all get together and run down to the railroad tracks because we knew somebody had just gotten hit by a train. And of course, they would have it cordoned off and everything, but as soon as they said they were done, we'd go walk the tracks looking for body parts. Right? And you'd be surprised at some of the crap we'd find, hanging in a bush or on a tree, because you get hit by a train, there's parts going everywhere.
Well, yeah, that's why they were called the meat slicers.
Yeah, and because you had the commuter trains, people would think, oh, this is their train coming, and they'd go to cross the tracks to get on the correct side of the board, and bam! I mean, if it was one of those fast Zephyrs or fast freights, even some of the commuter trains were express. They wouldn't stop at every station, and so yeah, we were pretty morbid kids. I can still remember walking the tracks and finding hunks of coal that had fallen off one of the steam engines.
That's pretty cool.
So,
all right. So, Split Rock says that if we were to do a 24-hour stream, we might make it up to the year of 1954. I don't know what Split Rock's talking about, but okay.
Sure.
I'm going to go back and see if I can find any other questions. If you got a question for Steve about the Burlington.
Here's some other Burlington innovations. In 1910, they were first to use printing telegraphs, whatever that is.
Oh, cool.
In 1915, they pioneered train radio communications. I didn't know there was such a thing as a radio in 1915. 1927, the Burlington route was one of the first to have CTC. And by 1957, had over 1,500 miles of track utilizing CTC. In 1945, the Burlington was the first to have Vistadome coaches.
That's nice.
And it was Cicero was where the hump yard was. One of the first railroads to have a hump yard, but it didn't have what year that was.
So Rick Bailey wants to know, how large is a lump of coal?
Size of a fist. At least the pieces we found.
So when I got to ride, Yeah, when I got to ride the Durango in Silverton back in 2017, they still used coal. And then, of course, they had that bad fire in 2018, and now Colorado government is making the Durango and Silverton. They had to convert all their locomotives to oil burners.
Wonder if the Cumbres and Toltec has to do that too, even though
I
half.
think so, because it's going through Colorado.
Yeah, only
But
half of it, but yeah.
But they didn't go through the San Juan Mountains though, so and that's where the fire was in the
Right.
San Juan Mountains.
Shay wanted to know if I only run passenger trains. No, I got freights too.
Yep, you got a meat train, right?
Yeah, I got a meat train. I got a grain train. I got a beer train, and then a manifest freight. So the trains I was running earlier, one was a Zephyr and one was the Chicago Blackhawk. Okay,
Oh, cool.
and it was funny back in the day of passenger trains before interstate highways and commercial airlines like we have now. You'd have a daytime train and an overnight train. Okay, and the Goddess Zephyrs would run between the Twin Cities and Chicago during the day, and the Blackhawk would be the overnight. Okay. You'd have like the California Zephyr, Denver Zephyr, and the Exarban. Okay. How many people know what Exarban means? Let's see if we can play a little quiz game in the interim.
Well, while you're waiting on see if anyone's got that answer, I got a yes or no for you. Heath wants to know: you got steam in that roundhouse?
Yes. Here and here. That's a 210-2 Ursa. Whoa.
Is that what they call the decapod?
No, I don't think so. And then this is a 282.
Heath is saying Ek-Sar-Ben. I know that one. Okay, well, what is it, Heath?
What is it? Is the inside track next to the roundhouse angle? No, yeah, this is an incline all the way up and around. If this is what you're talking about.
Ek-Sar-Ben is Nebraska backwards.
Rail artist, you got it. That is absolutely correct. The horse racing track in Omaha is named Exarban.
So Split Rock is saying the 210-2 is a Santa Fe type or not.
Yes.
Heath is saying a decapod is a 010-0. I've never heard of an 010-0.
I don't know.
I've heard of a 210-0, a 210-2.
The 210-2 is a Santa Fe type. All right.
Yeah. I think there's either it's a 410-2 or a 210-4. I can't remember that one. Okay, Split Rock is saying the decapod is a 210-0. That's okay. So that's where I was leaning at. So
there you go. Rail artist. What, at Boys Town?
Oh, that's pretty cool. So there's an in-scale company called Ek-Sar-Ben that used to paint overstock in Athern.
And they were probably located somewhere in Nebraska. You'd be surprised how many businesses are called Exarban in Nebraska.
That's pretty cool. And Gus is saying that they had a wireless telegraph.
So let's see. Trains angle towards the roundhouse on a curve. They are super elevated, if that's what you mean.
Super elevated, that's another term for like banking.
Yes.
So, what size turntable are you using on that
That's
for that
the
roundhouse?
Walter. That's the Walters 110.
110? I thought
Yeah,
they had a 90 or a 130. I didn't know
this is
they
the
had a
one.
110.
Yeah, this is the one in between it,
Really?
because 90 wasn't big enough, and 130 is too big for this area.
Oh
Okay?
wow. So I got the 130. And my yeah, Rick, that is so true. NASCAR is super elevated, especially at Daytona and Talladega. No lies about that.
You'd mentioned somewhere on one of the other streams, Jason, about the loop back, and that I had mine. You thought I had mine inside one of the loop backs, and yes, you were right. It is.
And that's where I'm actually on the new layout. I'm actually going to put mine inside. Some people call it a loop back. I've called it a balloon loop because that's actually a prototypical term. But balloon loops in the prototypical world, the only ones I really know about was on Donner Pass, and it was for their snow trains for the rotary snow plows for the pass. They had two balloon loops on both ends of the pass. One over, I think it was right at Truckee, and I cannot remember the other town. So,
You've
but I
got
always called them a balloon loop. Some people just call them a turnback. I mean, it's the same thing.
down in Southern California, you got the Tehachapi, where it loops back underneath itself.
But that's an actual loop.
Right.
You know, the Tehachapi loop. And I know there's like a lot of other railroads that would have kind of like a balloon loop / Y, type thing too.
Most
Pine Bluff, Arkansas has one between the Cotton Belt Hump Yard and the old Mopac McGee sub. There's a little balloon loop there. So a lot of yards would have them as well.
Yeah, CP, coal loading stations, flood loader coaling stations, a lot of those in Illinois, because Illinois has a huge coal business too.
Yeah.
And you'll have those balloon loops through the flood loading places.
Well, and you've got industrial loops as well that are considered balloon loops.
One
So,
thing, if you're gonna put a, like, even for a helix, when you put a incline on a curve, that's like adding another degree of incline.
mhm.
Right. So, I my F units won't pull a 7-car passenger train up the curves, this side or that side. I got to have double, an A and a B unit at least.
Yeah. Well, and I've got a passenger train it's a Walters heavyweight, the classic heavyweight set, and
Uh-huh.
it's like 13. It's either 13 or 14 passenger cars, and they're not light, at all because they have the details. You could put a lighting kit in it. I mean,
All
they've
of
got
my
some weight to it.
all of my cars, freight and passenger, are weighted to NMRA standards or slightly above.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I've got one of those MTH Alco PAs. It's die cast, so it's like really heavy.
uh-huh.
It could not pull that whole train up the helix on my old layout.
Now I tell you what, I love these Proto 2000E units because they're weighted a lot. Plus, they got 6 axles, and
Yeah.
a single one of those will pull an 8 train up and around that loop without a problem.
Well, that Alco that I have, it's heavier than the E unit because I have a Proto 2000 E unit that I'm actually trying to sell because I have no use for it. I know you're an E unit person, but you don't like anything daylight, so
Well, because it didn't come into Chicago other than on the Rock Island, on the
yeah.
Rock.
But
I forget what they
but
called
no,
that train. The Los
but
Angeles Rocket or something like that.
I think so. I think so. Oh, here we go.
String
Any
line issues. What do you mean by that? I don't know what he means by that.
Yeah, I don't either. Hey, Anthony Dodge, the model train
Hey, Anthony.
outsider, has Opa Dodge has joined us.
Grandpa Dodge.
So,
DC, I've got one if you ever want to borrow it.
I've got two.
I wish I would have had it when I actually laid this out.
If you're doing anything with inclines, a digital level is definitely the way to go.
Yep. Where's Lulu's on my layout? I don't have a Lulu's yet. This area right here is going to be a suburban town. All right. And maybe I'll put a Lulu's there.
So I guess Heath is talking about string.
Oh, where it pulls them over on the side?
Yeah.
Is that what he's talking about? String lining? The only time I've had that happen is, and I forget whose challenge it was back in January or February, about how many cars you could pull. Well, I don't have that many freight cars, but I got a lot of passenger cars. So I was seeing how many passenger cars I could pull. And
that would have been Uncle Wilmer's challenge.
Yeah, that's it. And I got down to the far side over at, by the grain elevator and pulled them all over going up that incline. So, but that I had 35 passenger cars. I mean, it went 20. It was probably a 25-foot long train.
That's awesome.
And the E unit was pulling it just fine until it.
So you missed from 1950 to 1924. I think Split Rock's giving you a hard time.
I that's Rail Artist. He said that too.
Oh, is that Rail Artist?
I've got 1915, 1921. Is that what you want to know about?
Oh, yeah. So many years, so much info. That's hilarious. So, all right. So I think I see is that a fuel tender you got over there as well?
Where? Here?
Behind you.
Right there?
Yeah.
Or there?
Did the Burlington actually have fuel tenders?
No. This is a tank car.
Oh, is it just a standard tanker?
And that's just a tank for the diesel fueling station.
Gotcha. Okay.
I
know some railroads had fuel tenders. I know the Burlington Northern did, because I've got two of them that I'm holding for Container Man because he says he wants them.
Fuel tenders?
Yeah.
You know, when you get out, for those that have never traveled across the plain states, you know, your Dakotas, Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, you know, Eastern Colorado, there's nothing out there. Right?
Oh no. Not by any means.
There's nothing. And so fuel tenders might be necessary.
Yeah. SP had one, and I don't think they used it very long.
Rick Bailey wants to know about his ancient ancestors. Lumber. That was a big commodity coming out of the Pacific Northwest on the Northern Pacific and Great Northern, interlined with the Burlington, bringing lumber in the Chicago and East. It was very big operation.
So Heath has got a really good question here. You were thinking about this layout for 40 years. What's your signature structures that you knew you needed to include?
Well, one is my Revell 1950 whatever Revell 2-stall engine house that I use for my Cicero engine facility. Okay, I've had that since 1965-ish. Okay, so I knew I had to have it. I wanted everything. Every structure I have in this layout means something. My lumber yard is the Heinz lumber yard in the Fairview area of Downers Grove. I got a Pepperidge Farm bakery that was there in the Fairview area of Downers Grove. The Roundhouse was out in Aurora. The structure still exists today. It's been turned into an office artsy fartsy area, but they call it the Roundhouse Commons for those that want to Google it. I've got the Chicago Stockyards. By the way, the Burlington was the first railroad to service the Chicago Stockyards. I've got the grain elevator on the river. I got the Texaco refinery, which is down along the river as well, down in Lockport. And then I've got the Vulcan Materials quarry, which was the old federal quarry, just within a stone's throw, literally, of the EMD plant in LaGrange. And it's funny because Route 66 would go right through the middle of that quarry up high. You have the quarry on both sides of Route 66. So,
oh, cool. So Heath has got another really good question. Is there something missing on your layout that you really want to include at some point?
Oh, hell yeah. Downtown Chicago's not there yet. I've got Union Station and the Chicago Post Office are the first structures to build for downtown Chicago. And it's cool because the Eisenhower Expressway goes right through the center of the old Chicago Post Office. But the area back on the island is going to be more western suburb stuff. And I hope to include a lot more industry out there to make operations a little more interesting.
Gotcha.
So.
Now, so Rail Artists has a really good point. If you do the stockyards, now do you have stockyards or is yours the slaughterhouse?
I have 2 sidings over there. Again, I'm not prototypical because you couldn't do this prototypically. I'd need a old Kmart building to do this prototypically.
I don't care. Anybody's railroad, nothing is 100% prototypical.
Absolutely correct.
There's
anyway,
just
so
no
I have
way.
One side has stock pins. All right. The other siding is for the packing plant. Okay. So that's my representation of the Chicago stockyards. And I don't have the aroma. No. Unless I pass some gas, but, which has been known to happen. Okay.
Hey, at least my room is contained inside the tanks.
But I do. Hang on a second. Alexa, cows on.
Okay.
Alexa, pigs on.
Okay.
I can hear it. Now he's going to go over there so we can really hear it.
Okay, so I do have the sound effects. I still need to get another cow and pig module to go back here because I do have my farm scene back here, where I can switch in stock cars and grain cars back there. So
right. All right. Roy Eltham wants to know: will you go full automation with Jmri eventually?
No. And the reason being is I want to interact with the railroad. You know, it's not if it was a museum, yeah. But I want to interact with either running operations, switching freights, and so forth, or for my passengers, when it's all said and done, there'll be 3 independent and interconnecting loops. Okay, so I can run a multitude of different patterns for both the passenger and freight trains, but I can let 3 trains run simultaneously on different tracks and not have to worry about it, let alone multiple trains on the same track. But one of the other things I like is videoing. You know, back. You know, when I was a kid back in the 60s, growing up, or even the late 50s, you know, model railroading was totally different. But one of the things I enjoy about modern technology now, and that I've been working on as of late, is the videoing. I love the run bys, okay, and putting together videos of that. And I've been putting in USB ports all around the layout so that I can connect cameras.
Oh, cool.
As an example, currently the 4 cameras I have hooked up are these.
So
But
we can see the cow pasture.
Yeah, you get to see the farm. The actual farm, the barn and stuff is over to the left a little bit further.
Oh, are you? So did you move that with your hand, or do you actually have a PTZ camera?
I did that with my hand.
Ah, okay.
I know that's cheating. Here's those pigs.
So Heath has. So since we're talking about your industries, Heath has a real good question.
Okay.
Operations or rail fanning on your layout. I know you mentioned something about operations earlier, so I'm gonna go ahead and say you're leaning right now. You might be doing some rail fanning, or your layout's probably designed for both.
It is. It's designed for both.
Like mine or my future layout will be.
The
But he wants to know car cards and waybills, or are you going to go with the switch list through Jmri like what Flying Crow does?
Jmri switch list.
I'm thinking about going that route when I build my new one, but I'm definitely keeping the car cards.
Yeah, and car cards is probably a little more interactive. Okay. But the thing I like about the Jmri operations is it will supposedly rotate your rolling stock, and put together different trains. So, you set the routes. Like I have a train that wants to go from here, 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 and here, but that train will be different every single time as far as what cars it's taking and picking up. Right, and Jmri will decide that for you, and I like that randomness. Okay, because it can add a whole nother level of challenges to your switching operations as well.
So have you done any type of setups as far as like switch list or waybills in the past?
I have not.
So this is going to be like something completely new for you.
It is. I've never run operations. Okay. I'm used to the old DC days, and on a 4x8 layout. This is the first time I've had something bigger than a 4x8. Well, not the first time, but first time I've had more than 2 4x8 sheets of plywood. Okay.
Right.
And
so like as far as me, like I decided I didn't really know about switch lists when I started all this, so I went with the car cards and waybills. The car cards, it's basically just the car's information. The reporting marks, the build date, is it designed for hazmat materials only, things like that. Which your hazmat would typically be your tankers and your chemical covered hoppers. And so that was literally the only information the car card provided. Some people would put the descriptions down. I went with this other software that allowed me to use a picture that I took of it. So that way you could, see exactly, oh, that is the car,
Jmri,
instead of playing guessing games.
You can do that in Jmri too.
But the waybills was a little card that went down in the pocket of the car card. And on the waybills, I literally had to make the routes up myself. So like say I got this stock car, I want to say that it's coming from Union Stockyards out of Omaha, Nebraska. I want it, and it's empty, so it's going to go to High Stakes Ranch to go get loaded, and then we're going to send it up to Juicy J's Meat Company, and then we're going to send it back to High Stakes Ranch to get loaded again, and then we're going to send it back to Omaha, to the stockyards. And so I had to literally create every single route on those waybills. And, the randomization for me came with when it was in staging, is that car going on the track or is it not? And I had to create a spreadsheet with all my industries as far as like a randomizer of needs and stuff, because High Stakes Ranch could hold 2 stock cars, but not every time did I need it to do 2 stock cars.
Right.
So I did a randomizer, and I kind of followed John Arthur, because he did this in some of his videos, and I kind of mimicked what he did. And so it was like rolling a dice, a 6-sided dice. If it rolled a 2 or higher, then High Stakes Ranch would take, or not 2, a 3 or higher, then High Stakes Ranch would take 2 stock cars for that day. They would have a need for 2 cars. If it rolled a 1 or a 2, then it only took 1 stock car for that day. And I had that set up on all of my industries. And so that's kind of how I was doing the operations. And then after finding out about the switch list, and Robert Flying Crow did a real excellent job on his videos, explaining the setup and stuff.
Right.
It's like it does all of that for you.
Yep.
But I'm still thinking the car cards is going to be good, especially for someone new. So that way, they're holding the whole train in their hand. They just don't have the waybills,
right?
With the cards. So
I just
know
got
when people.
I got entranced with Jmri, because somebody asked, which do I spend more time on, koi or my railroad? Well, for the last year, the railroad, because my koi hobby was not only my pond in the backyard, but it was taking fish to koi shows for competitions. All right, which you couldn't do last year. So the answer to that question is the railroad takes more time now.
Yeah.
And that's fine. They're both extremely expensive, though.
Well, I'll tell you, and I'm sure most of us have other hobbies. Like, I know Ray, he bowls.
Yep.
He's his league president. I used to bowl league, and that was a lot of fun. Ever since I moved here, I haven't done any of it. But, my other hobbies is with, Junior, and he does scouting, and that takes up a lot of my time. But last year, it didn't take up so much time because of the whole showstopper restrictions and things like that. But now it's really fixing to start.
There's no way I could have done this with my kids growing up. The koi hobby, on the other hand, was a family hobby. All the kids had their own fish, all right, and would enter their fish in the koi shows, and everybody get a big kick out of it every time one of the kids beat me in a competition. So, they were very well known in the koi hobby until they grew up and went away to college. So.
And yes, Heath, so just to go ahead and clarify that one, Aaron has been taking Taekwondo for about a year and a half now. And he just got his purple belt with the black stripe, which purple is halfway to black. It's actually past halfway. And he has talked both me and Amanda into doing Taekwondo as well. So I guess you could say that's a new hobby that we're doing. So, and I just got my orange belt the other night. So,
can you train the koi to do tricks? You can train them to eat out of your hand.
Hey, that's a trick.
I tell people
they don't run from you.
You'd be surprised. I tell people, I get them to jump through hoops and do all this stuff just like a dolphin. Really? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, let's see. Nissy is saying, my son saw my table after I painted it, and he said that would be awesome for Legos. Hey, Nissy, they do have Lego trains, because I actually have 2 of those. I've got a passenger train that looks like Opa Dodge's ICE 2 or 3, one of the ICE German ICEs, and then I have a small little freight train as well. And the locomotive kind of looks like a GP20. Let's see here. That would be correct. Purple with a black stripe. Was there any other railroad that had purple besides the ACL? I can't think of any.
Not that I can think of either.
So, okay. So, what specific day / year are you modeling?
I do not narrow it down to a specific day nor year for that matter. I just leave it at the mid 60s.
Okay.
Because I've got some build dates on some of these rail cars from 1966, 1967. All right. So, and then, I'd like to say 1965, but because I got those build dates, I can't even say that.
So, since we got a few people talking about Lego trains, so the Arkansas Lego Club, which is out of Little Rock somewhere, they actually custom build specific locomotives, and I think they use I think it's O-scale decals to make those Lego trains like a specific train. I've seen them do the UP 844. I've seen them do, the Cotton Belt 9389. That was the Cotton Belt's bicentennial. But I think they use O-scale decals to do all of that. They've done a whole bunch. Like a Rock Island. If you go to the video I did back in, I think it was February when I went to Northwest Arkansas, they had their whole layout up there, and it was really cool. Really cool. That's what I was thinking. It is real close to O. Now, one thing about the Lego Club is if it's not Legos made by Lego, they don't want it. So you can't use the Tyco blocks or anything like that. It has to be all Lego.
Huh.
Well, does anybody else have any questions for Steve about the Burlington? Steve, did you pretty much go over everything you wanted to go over?
Yeah, I went back through all my notes. I think Oh, here's another tidbit. The Burlington, because of getting that mail contract from Chicago to St. Joe, was also the first to have a railway post office.
Oh, cool. So you're talking about the old RPO?
Yep.
Very, very cool. Exactly. So it was talking about Lego purist rivet counters or brick counters. Yeah. Pretty much. All right. Well, Steve, we've already hit over an hour and a half, so I think we're probably going to go ahead and start wrapping this up. Well,
anything on my layout
that you hate? Okay, so while you're answering that, all of you in chat, I'm gonna go ahead and let y'all promote your channels. Let us know where you're at as for your subscriber counts. If you got any upcoming contest, I know I will be redoing the second winner for my 700 subscriber. I might try to do it one night this week because the other winner did not claim their prize, and so I've got an O, HO, or N-scale prize to give away because like a One Rail fan really wanted that sound car, and I told him, I said, well, if the person doesn't claim or if they want to trade with you, then I'll let you have it, and so no one claimed.
Randall, I have 3 cb&q cabooses.
Okay.
I have 2 Santa Fe cabooses, and I have a U.S. Army caboose.
So Heath's question, is there anything on your layout that you hate or basically want to replace?
You know, there are a number of things that as I built this layout, I didn't like and have been systematically going back and correcting those. Okay. From my bridges over there and how they work. And to this incline back there, I had to rip all that out and redo it. I've redone some of the tracks between modules because out here, this was a patio that was enclosed and it's not temperature controlled. I do have a portable air conditioner sitting right next to me that when I'm sitting here freezes me to death. But I get expansion and contraction. And I still have a couple places where the tracks are cut that cross over from one module to another that I've got to go back and cut away on each side and put a bridging type of track over that gap and just solidify it.
Rail joiners, no, not rail, re-railers work great on that. My previous layout, not the one I just tore out, but the one before it, it was like a big rectangle, and the sections that were out in the middle of the garage, I made modular. I had them on casters, so that way if I needed to take it apart for any reason, I could. And I used rail joiners to join those sections together, and it worked amazing.
The issue I have at the one here now, it's going from an incline to a flat. Okay. And
that same way.
With
mine was that way too.
I don't know that a re-railer will work in that circumstance.
Well, see,
I don't have any re-railers on this layout, not a one. So
what happened with me when I was building it, I built along the wall and I used a level.
Uh-huh.
And then as I came around and I was coming out the center of the room, I totally did not know that a garage floor has a very slight degree slope.
Uh-huh. No, concrete anywhere. I can guarantee you, concrete anywhere is not necessarily level. Okay?
Well, it literally had, for 16 feet in length, it had a drop of 2 inches.
Towards the door, I take it.
Towards the door, so that way when you pull the car in and it's raining, the water would run away from the house.
Right.
So, needless to say, this little section that went from over here that was 2 inches higher than this section over here that was 2 inches lower, that was a pretty good grade.
Yep.
And I used rail joiners on both joints of it, and it worked great.
Rail joiners or re-railers?
I'm sorry, not rail joiners, re-railers.
Okay.
Re-railers. And it worked great. No issues whatsoever.
I did the top tracks a couple weeks ago, and basically just cut a section and put a span in there and soldered the tracks up, and it's fine. Because originally the section I call downtown Chicago lifted up so I could get underneath to do wiring and stuff. And It looked good on paper, but it was a bad idea. I can get to what I need to do underneath the cabinets just as easily. So,
gotcha. So going back to some of these channels that saying they're doing stuff, we got Flying Crow. He is at 433, and he says he is doing a contest at 500. I wonder if he's going to be giving away any of his cabooses, because all his cabooses are brass. So I'm just messing, Robert. I would not expect you to give one of those away. That probably costs as much as giving away a locomotive.
Yes, those are my pigs, Missy.
So Heath is saying he has an interview with Bill Decker tomorrow night at 6 p.m. for Modeling Monday. So make sure you check that out. When you have enough space for your dream layout. Well, I think I got plenty of space on mine. I got a 20 by 20 foot garage that we're We're actually going to be doing construction this upcoming weekend, and it will become a train room. And instead of using the portable AC unit and the space heaters, I actually went and bought a through-the-wall AC unit that has a heat pump on it, so it does both heating and cooling. So we're going to install that too. Tim says he's got 75 subs, no contest probably ever. New video and talk about the trip to Rochester and plans for future acquisitions. And hopefully we'll get that unboxing 18 cars filmed up soon. Well, I'm looking forward to that, Tim. And I'm sure there's 25 of you in here that probably are not subbed to Tim. So make sure you go sub to Tim.
All right, Anthony.
All right, let's see. And I'm behind in chat, so I'm just trying to play catch up. Split Rock says, if you want to listen to a model railroad podcast while at your workbench or more or less working on the layout, he says, listen to The Crossing Gate. It's available on most platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Buzzsprout, and Apple. So that's pretty cool. All right, continuing on, we got Greg from Midsummer Railway, 78 subs. He's got lots of view on his DCC ++EX setting up new video coming out later this week. That would be interesting. I don't know if I'm going to go to DCC ++EX, but... And I guess that's probably because I've already invested a lot of money into the system that I have. Steve 87th wants to know how I get the water out of the garage. Well, I don't pull a vehicle in there, so I don't have to deal with that.
Well, you're not going to have a garage shortly anyway, so.
Exactly. And just to make sure, we're going to end up cutting a little bit of the concrete for the driveway, and I'm going to install a French drain just to make sure. So, we got Container Man saying that he's got 1,537 videos. So that's a lot of videos. Roy Eltham's at 170. He plans for a contest at 200. So we need to try to get him some more subs. Now, if you are subscribing to a new channel, make sure that you interact with your channel in some form or fashion, because if you don't, YouTube will kick your subscription off.
Yep.
So at least go and watch a couple of videos, thumbs them up, and at least comment on one of them and just say, hey, I'm a new sub, and just say where you came from. A lot of times if I sub to a new channel and it's because another channel shouted them out, I will say, hey, I just subbed to you because you got shouted out by that channel. So, and that kind of helps, let people know, like if they got 20 subs, like, dude, what happened? Like, how did I get 20 subs in a day? Well, you kind of let them know. So
Roy is at 1537 subs. Not videos.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, he said just more videos, so I didn't know what he was saying.
But he meant to say subs.
Oh wow, the chat just really jumped on me. That's crazy. Okay.
There was a train show over at St. Pete this weekend. I didn't get a chance to go.
Yep. Once you go DCC, you won't go back, and that is so true. That is so true. You have so much more control with DCC. It's unreal. And Z is exactly right. Right now, it's a garage, and after the 4th of July, 5th of July, it's going to be a train room. All right. Hey, we got Possum Bayou. Rusty is in the house. I didn't see you sneak in. So, all right. So we are at 148. So I am going to go ahead and call it. I'm not seeing any more things. So y'all in the chat, make sure you check each other out in the chat. Like I said, and if they got videos, make sure you watch a couple of videos before you subscribe to them. So that way you do not lose your subscription to that channel. And it also helps if you feel in the bell, so that way you can see what they have going on, because there's a lot of channels out there that do contests and stuff, and if you're not watching, I mean, look at that guy way way over there, he held a contest and only one person applied for it. So, yeah, instant winner, you know. All right. Well, everyone, I appreciate y'all being here, and I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. Steve, thanks for being on and talking about the Burlington with me. I learned quite a bit of stuff tonight that I did not know, so it makes
Anything and everything you never wanted to know.
everywhere knowledge from Steve Childers. How about that?
There you go.
That'll be your new slogan, everywhere knowledge.
Just like
So-
Cliff Clavin.
And then moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on the chat. Y'all are big help as always. And
I will
other than
have
that, I'm gonna let. Nope.
I will have
go.
an update video, hopefully next week, and it will show this. I've been building this for 1 year this month, so I'm going to walk through the build over the last year in that video. So
That'd be pretty cool. I'm looking forward to that. Container Man says we did not get off the track at all, and that is because the other STS guys did not get into the basement. And they had the link to join because I sent it to them if they
Roy,
wanted
you
to
must-
get on. But
you must have missed my morbid minute.
oh yeah. All right, guys. Y'all take care. Be safe out there. Happy railroading.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Jason.